2.
Hi, this is Paula Gloria, and this show is called Farther Down the Rabbit Hole because we like to go into topics more deeply. Thanks to a good friendship with Harold Channer, I always keep in mind we also have to be comprehensive, because sometimes if you go into a topic so deeply, you become tunnel vision. That doesn't achieve the purpose of a more fulfilling life. And that's what I think knowledge should be about, and that's what I think media should provide. Today, I'm very pleased to have with me a guest who is going to talk to us about an amicus brief that was filed on behalf of Howard Stern, and I think Howard Stern may not even know that it was filed. And as I was reading these legal documents, it was like a thriller to me because of some of the experience I've had in the past with the Federal Communications Commission, and based on some of this experience, some of my very deep concerns about the future. So for that reason, I'm really pleased to have Carl Pearson with me.
Thank you. I'm very pleased to be here.
Yeah. Can you tell me a little bit about the history? Or, well, first of all, what gets you in the position that you would do something like this? You're a litigation lawyer?
My wife has been a fan of Howard Stern for years. And when he switched over, she subscribed to the appropriate broadcast facilities and listened to it there as well. So for years, I've been listening to Howard Stern, not because I chose to do so, but because my wife chose to wake up and listen to it.
That's interesting, because usually they say he has more males that appreciate him and the females less so.
Well,
so I thought this was...
I didn't do it, but I was the beneficiary of someone who selected Howard Stern, and I listened to him for a long time, and had was concerned when I saw that there were attacks on Howard Stern. He basically was coming out against President Bush at one time, and he also, for a long period of time, has been more risque and more adventurous with the programming that he's done. And for that reason, because he's gone beyond the envelope, he's had a lot of followers that were increasing in number dramatically over a long period of time. And as a result, I saw that there were attacks that were being made on him, and that these attacks were basically ones that were designed to inhibit the show from doing what it did, and that would also inhibit other people that were doing similar shows. It would have a restraint on freedom of press, the right to say what one wants on the air. So I'm a civil rights lawyer, and I was interested in Howard Stern because my wife was raving about him every day, and that I listened to him for so many years that I felt that maybe I can do something about it, because I have those skills. The problem that I was addressing was the fact that Infinity Broadcast was being sued, and they were the ones who were putting Howard Stern on the air at that time over radio.
They were being sued by the government.
But they were being threatened by the government. But they were being. There was a proceeding in the FCC to fine Infinity like a large sum of money, a very large sum of money, and some other radio programs or broadcasters were being fined. They didn't fine the artists.
It wasn't that large. It was only $27,000, right?
Well, there was another one also, but there was the threat that at the same time the FCC, we were told, I think Infinity or Howard Stern announced this, that the FCC had taken a position that unless the fine was paid and no opposition was given to this procedure of fining Infinity and Clear Channel, that the FCC would refuse to renew each and every radio license of those broadcasters as the licenses came up for renewal. Now, there were something like over 1,000 licenses involved, and every day of the week there was at least one, maybe two, possibly 3 licenses that were coming due.
Right.
So no broadcaster that's a public company, such as Clear Channel and Infinity, could possibly allow their asset base to be taken away by the threat of
right.
the federal government that would just say, we're not going to renew your licenses. That means that for each of these 1,000 radio stations, one by one, you have to go off the air because it would be illegal for you to broadcast without a license. That was the threat that was made to Infinity.
It's a very real threat.
It's a real threat.
Yeah.
And I recognize that Infinity as a company, as a billion-dollar company, owner of CBS and others at that time, could hardly stand up to the federal government that's threatening to take away its license. Because what does a
right.
broadcasting company have other than a license? It
right.
has a couple of transmitters or one or two for each station, maybe.
I absolutely know
yeah.
that because
yeah.
we sold our company for $22 million,
yeah.
and that's all it was about,
yeah.
was the license to,
yeah.
To broadcast a cellular signal in 13 counties in Kentucky.
So when they're threatening CBS, Infinity, the parent, to take away each and every license one after another, how could the company do anything at all but buckle under, which is
right.
what the FCC wanted it to do? So I figured that maybe I could come to the rescue. That was the intention here, that somebody with nothing to lose. I mean, I don't have a radio license or a
right.
television license, so what do I care?
Right.
I could go in there and do something, possibly. So I thought about it for a while, and for maybe a day or even less. I think I did it during a weekend. I did it over a 2 or 3 day period. And I decided that I would intervene, that I would go in as and I had to define what it is I was going in as, because just because, let's say, I'm a listener, that wouldn't necessarily give me standing. It's called standing. Do you have standing
right.
to bring this
right.
proceeding? I said, well, if there are 15 million listeners that have standing theoretically because they're listening to that one show, I don't think that the FCC is going to buy that there are 15 million people with standing. So what else do I have? I am a listener, but is there anything else? So I said, well, I have been placing radio ads. I've been writing and cutting or going into a studio and preparing and paying for the broadcast of certain radio ads in the New York City area. So I said, I think that is it, because I would probably like to run an ad on the Howard Stern show as well, maybe a local ad.
Because it targeted your market.
Yeah, because it's part of my market, and I don't like the fact that they're taking off one of the broadcasters. They're threatening to remove a broadcaster from my area where I'm buying ads, and that will cause my cost of advertising to go up. If a broadcaster goes out of business, that would tend to cause my advertising to go up, and it reduces my opportunity of choosing who I can address my ad to, so that it really forecloses my commercial speech.
Right.
It's a First Amendment problem, not the First Amendment of somebody running for office, but it's called commercial speech. I have a right to have free commercial speech. So I put all that together and drafted the appropriate papers.
Another thing I want to emphasize is you say the Commission is following rules which it has not duly promulgated and which could not be upheld even if formally adopted. So can you define promulgated?
Promulgated means official adoption through the procedure of that agency. The agency has to publish the rules, and they have to have a hearing on them and give notice to the world to come in and oppose, and then as a body, the commissioners would then consider all the evidence and then order that the rule be made effective, and that's promulgation, I guess, at that point.
Okay, but you said that it hasn't really, in other words, it hasn't really articulated what the problem was, because it's not a matter of you don't say these words. It was a little vaguer than that.
Well, I see two things here. Number one, they did not promulgate a rule that says that if you contest us, that we take away your licenses. That's number one. There was no promulgation of that rule. And secondly,
I see.
Right, so I mean, what kind of a rule is that if you contest what we're doing, even though the law allows you to, we're going to take away $10 billion or $1 trillion worth of licenses? That's not
amazing.
A rule. That's not right. So they didn't promulgate that. But I think the promulgation, if it wasn't that, just thinking back now for a few years, it probably also was the fact that to define obscenity has been difficult for everyone involved. Some people say, well, you know it's obscene when you hear it. You can sort of tell that. Then there was a concept that well, local people needed to tell it because maybe something obscene in Tennessee is not obscene in New York. So the local rules. But then that breaks up a national market. It means that you have to worry, if you're a publisher, about offending people in Tennessee or in Memphis and not offending people elsewhere. So
people elsewhere would say, "Oh, they're New Yorkers, so we give them a break."
Right. I mean, so basically, you destroy a market for free speech by putting conditions on it that you have to meet the requirements of 40,000 different communities in the United States.
You know how you articulated here, it says the licensed broadcasters are unable to know how to comply with the rule without adopting a policy of overkill, which means that to avoid trouble with the Commission, the nation's largest broadcasters are now taking shows off the air without regard to their right to air such shows, but merely because 3 members of the Commission claim that it is in the best interest of the country for shows they do not like to be taken off the air. And then you go on to say that this has implications greater than Watergate. You said Nixon and Watergate was minuscule. No, smaller than minuscule, which is interesting for a lawyer to say, compared to what the Commission is now doing.
Yeah, they're depriving the whole country of freedom of speech. And it's a political gambit that these 3 commissioners were doing, that they were catering to the religious right and taking a government agency and bending it to the will of a minority in America in order to cater to that minority, to bolster it, and to pay them off for the support that was given. There's a political thing here.
And the only way that the public knew about it was Howard Stern talking about his own problem. I mean, it's sort of sad, because if he keeps griping on about this, then you think it's his problem. Was no one else coming to bat for this?
I don't really recall, because it was Infinity and Howard Stern that were causing the problem. Plus,
but there was
another group, another comedic or morning group that was involved in this. But Infinity and Clear Channel were carrying Howard Stern, and in various markets, and Howard Stern was the target here. The main target was Howard Stern.
Is that because he had such a large audience?
Oh, of course, and because he was also pushing the envelope quite a bit. I mean, that's what he did. And
is protesting the war pushing the envelope? Because your wife feels that he came in on a Monday. She was such an avid listener. Yeah. That's what she described to me. Right. And she said within no time at all, Clear Channels dropped him all over. But then I guess that wasn't enough. They wanted him.
I think they dropped him because of the threat. I think
they didn't want to lose their licenses.
Yeah, Clear Channel also was sued here, and they were threatened with a loss. I think they had more radio stations licensed than CBS. CBS might have had, and I'm guessing, and I put the number in here, might have been 700 or so, and Clear Channel might have been 1,100. There was something like that. But they had between roughly 1,500 stations involved that they were threatened with a loss of their license, and that would destroy 2 public companies to lose all those licenses. So I understood where
they had no choice.
They have no choice. I understood that, but I had a choice. I could come in and do something because I don't even have 1 radio station license, not even 1. I mean, nobody has 1. How can you have 1 when 2 companies had most of them?
Right.
So that's the problem that we have with monopolization. That you
excuse me, go on.
Sure, you shouldn't allow 1 or 2 companies to have most of the licenses of anything. This is unfair. We shouldn't allow newspapers to newspapers historically have been monopolizing the town or the city in which they operate, because only one really essentially, except in New York City, is able to make it. And even now in New York City, we're not sure. So when they have the one newspaper that monopolizes the territory in which they're publishing, that same newspaper buys one of the television stations, and then 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 of the radio stations.
Right.
So you have a monopoly across market in various ways, which leads to not accepting certain performers. It leads to cutting out the kind of news that many people would like to receive. It cuts out freedom of speech. It eliminates political choice, or it cripples it dramatically. There's a lot of
I think it
evils
threatens
in that.
national security.
Of course. Well,
I think it, you know, because with 9/11, we're going to talk in another show about your ballot initiative for 9/11, where you can highlight a great crime against New Yorkers, the country, but also the entire world, and it's directly related to the media. And your brilliant funding of this initiative with a city attorney general's office. But I will reserve that for the next show.
You know how timely that is? You know that in today's newspaper, page 14 of the New York Post, Governor Patterson said that we're, in the state level, we're falling short $1 billion or something like that. I read $1 billion. I said, I'm sure it's more than that. And I'm laughing because the answer is right there if they would only do it.
Right.
I mean, Spitzer, when he was Attorney General, raised $3 billion per year by bringing suit. All they need to do...
Explain that roughly, since we're into it now.
The Attorney General is the civil enforcer for the state. A prosecutor is a criminal law enforcer, and that's at a county level.
Right.
So we have 52 counties or something like that in New York, and we have a prosecutor in each county. But from the Attorney General standpoint, we only have one. So it's a very top-heavy organization where we only have the one Attorney General. We don't have something at the county level.
Right.
So what I want is to have an Attorney General at every town, city, county, village in New York. Let
me get it down from legalese.
Sure.
An Attorney General protects your rights, right?
They enforce,
and the prosecutor says, wraps your fingers when you've done wrong.
The prosecutor enforces your duties and puts you in jail, breaks up families, confiscates your money, creates prison farms, and has nothing but misery for people in the pretense that this is what the public wants.
And how many of those do we have?
We have a prosecutor elected at every county level.
Yeah.
And they have assistant prosecutors,
I see.
DAs.
So at the county level, you don't have anyone protecting rights, like when Walmart
you
comes in.
don't have it at the city or county or town level. But how about, and the prosecutor works at government expense. So they enforce our duties at government expense. They have people going around issuing tickets, putting people in jail and all that, government expense. But how about the rights that we have as human beings, the rights to have no fraud at the voting place? What about the rights to our jobs when people sell our jobs? The rights to education, the rights to health care.
To good economic policy.
Why don't we have somebody at the government level enforcing those rights?
Right.
We used to have government agencies that did that. They don't do it anymore.
Which were the agencies that used to do that?
Well, the SEC, the EEOC, the FTC, the Justice Department, the Department of Consumer Affairs, the Attorney General. There's all sorts of agencies that used to help.
Wow.
They don't do it anymore.
Yeah.
So what we need is one legal person in the town level, every town, village, and county, to become those agencies that have left that business. We need somebody to enforce the rights of us at government expense.
So someone close to the people is important.
Right.
Because particularly when you're having this type of litigation, for example, your wife was telling me Sony wasn't good at sending back the rebates, and they were fined $40 million. So how is that distributed? It would seem the Attorney General on the local level, who knows the needs of the people that were defrauded, you know, maybe not the specific ones, but certainly a lot closer than a state Attorney General, would be able to put that back, to even it out. I mean, that's what it's about.
If banks are not recognizing your payment until after they hit you with a late fee, the Attorney General could go in and stop that.
Right.
They could sue for the people involved. at the state level and maybe the county level, you have a lot of huge, large businesses that don't pay taxes. Most of the companies, from what I understand, are not paying income taxes. What they say is that their expenses are in America, their income is from other countries, therefore we have no taxable income in the United States, and a large percentage of companies are not paying taxes.
Yeah.
So a real good area for the Attorney General of New York State, or at a local level, would be to try to recover the money that hasn't been paid for years.
Wow.
When somebody moves jobs out of the state or out of a city, they sell the jobs to some other place, but they took $100 million in subsidies. Will sue to recover those subsidies. Those are causes of action that an attorney general, state,
right.
city, county,
right.
could bring, so that we have money here in the state.
Yeah. No, I know what the argument would be is that when you tax the companies, then they go elsewhere. So people are terrified of losing their jobs. But there's that, taxes is always a little bit of a gloomy topic, but a bright topic is binary economics, which is capital ownership. That's what I meant about more plans to look after the people, to ensure that if products are brought to market and companies have to borrow capital so that they can build it out, they don't sell shares on Wall Street. They go to reinsurers, and based on the earnings of future capital, they acquire that money. So that means the ownership in those future the companies that exist now, which will be bigger in the future, can be distributed. You can have more ownership, more people having private property. And I think there's a stigma against corporations today.
Let me ask you something. Let's say that I found a business that's worth $10 million, and because I'm very charitable, I want to give away my company to everyone in New York State. So I issue a piece of paper to every adult or in New York State, and I give away half my company. Is that legal?
I don't know. I mean,
it is not. It's a violation of the securities laws. You have to register with the federal government before you can give away your money.
Why is that?
Because you've created a security that people will buy and sell in the marketplace. And on the other hand, though, when these offshore companies are buying are selling short, they're selling companies short. There is no registration there, so that the SEC is looking at something that might be helpful in regulating it out of existence, but when the things are really disastrous, they don't come in and regulate.
Right.
So you really need to have other people than the existing agencies start looking at law enforcement. You need somebody for the people that's going to go in and be a supplement to the declining enforcement activity that we have now of the rights of the people.
Now, you would think, nature seeks balance, and, if there's so many abuses or, something goes extremely out of balance, it will come back in, like, to read with horror about what 3 commissioners could do with Howard Stern and these others. Then the internet comes along, and then there's that hope that people can start to share information, and people will start to gravitate towards those portals of authority that have put a lot of energy and time into considering a topic, and as a result they get a lot of people that are interested. Then it seems as though you can control them through controlling the broadband, or even in the case of YouTube, at the beginning when they said, come, post on YouTube, and anybody else couldn't get a foothold into that because the bandwidth was so expensive. And so today you can see, even if you've got a hot topic, as evidenced by the fact that it gets taken down, because there's definitely some control mechanism going on, much as, it's different than the FCC commissioner, because there's no accountability whatsoever. They just pull the video down. You can't get a human being. I even went down there in person. Google, which bought YouTube, is a big unmarked building. You come in there and they right away assume that you're a criminal, the way they're attacking you. And so you can see that what you said, that this could be worse than Watergate, was really so, because there's other ways of controlling. Yet I'm wondering, where does the courage come? Because it says here, when the FCC responded to your petition for a rehearing or your amicus brief, it says, Infinity has never challenged our determination that it broadcast the relevant material during the Dominski and Doyle show. You know, that was the other person. But you're saying Infinity never questioned it because they didn't want their licenses to be taken away.
That's
Is that right?
In other words, they're using my argument of why I'm needed to say that I'm really not needed because the people I'm trying to protect aren't complaining.
Yeah.
But I'm saying the reason they're not complaining is that you've held a gun to their head, and that's illegal.
Yeah.
And you're affecting me as an advertiser and as a listener. You're affecting the freedom of speech of these entities that I listen to and then I patronize, and you can't do that. I'm saying this is why I got in there and brought my suit.
Right, right. And then it talks about, as measured by contemporary student standards, no finding that the material was profane. It says, moreover, Infinity's arguments concerning profanity are irrelevant because there was no finding that the material broadcast over there was profane.
Then why are they threatening to take away the license?
I know.
So where are the standards by which you can take away the broadcaster's license? There aren't any rules. What are the rules for obscenity?
Right, right.
What are there 7 or 8 words you can't use? I mean, is that it? I mean, those words are used in movies, are used everywhere. I mean,
I know.
So what are the standards here?
And it not only inhibits other radio shows, but I think it starts to set something out in all of society where everyone becomes inhibited.
Well, that's absolutely true.
So I really want to thank you for joining me on this show, and that my hope is that I'll post this on YouTube, sort of as a tribute to Howard Stern, because I think at one time, I don't think it was that well understood, and when it comes from a new eyes of an attorney, you see things in a different way.
Thank you.
So hopefully others will benefit from this, and I consider this food for thought. And also, if we can learn something from this, look over the horizon a little bit, because the Manhattan Neighborhood Network is going to be coming up with Time Warner for the refranchising this fall. And at the hearing, I was very troubled when somebody suggested that Google be the one that oversees the whole thing with MNN, and I think that's a very bad choice, just because I have not had any satisfaction in my dealings with Google. So thanks a lot, Carl.
Quite welcome.
So stay tuned for future shows, and we're going to be talking on our next show with Carl about the 9/11 ballot initiative that includes the Office of the Attorney General for the City of New York. So I guess 2 minutes is longer than I thought. Sometimes that happens.